Hi, everyone. I'm Audrey Decker with Defense One, and I'm back to wrap up our State of the Air Force coverage with General Mike Minihan, Commander of Air Mobility Command. General Minihan, thank you for joining us.
Good morning and welcome virtually to the cornfields of Illinois, where it's a chilly 39 degrees this morning, but beautiful day and an absolute honor to talk to you. Thank you.
General Minihan is in charge of Air Mobility Command, which is responsible for transporting troops and weapons and for refueling U.S. and allied military aircraft in flight around the world. The command's planes and crew are currently assisting with humanitarian airdrops in the Middle East, and while tackling daily operational needs, it's also figuring out the refueling and mobility needs of the future and how it will operate long distances in the Pacific. And back at home, the Department of the Air Force recently announced its effort to re-optimize for great power competition. General, I'd like to start by asking you about this re-optimization effort. What's the current state of Air Mobility Command, and what does this change for the command?
Thank you. Well, the current state of Air Mobility Command is it's in extremely good shape right now. I've been in command for about 2.5 years. I've got about 5 months left in both my command and my career. And I can, with extreme confidence, say that this team is on step and ready to handle any challenge that the world delivers. That being said, we've got an enormous amount of work that lies ahead of us in order for us to be ready for, the highest of challenges. So, I've got a string of operational issues that have happened during my command, starting with, just before my command. But if you look at the retrograde out of Afghanistan, you look at the Kabul airlift, which was immediately turned into the Ukraine support. Then we did the Israel operations that kicked in last October. And now, as you described, the support for humanitarian efforts in Gaza. Those are a string of operations that demonstrate the prowess, the professionalism, the capabilities of Air Mobility Command and its total force fleet, its total force airmen. And it's been incredible to watch that. Along with that, we've also had a series of exercises that have, also, added to my confidence, whether you're talking Mobility Guardian, which happened last summer, or Bamboo Eagle, which happened in January, and exercises that are currently along the way. So combined, those things give me an enormous amount of confidence. And the grade I give my team is from where we were to where we are, that's an A+. That is a reflection of their ability to handle both the tyranny of the urgent and also to be able to get ready for what's possibly could come. But from where we are to where we need to be, that's about a C. And that's not a reflection of the command. That's just a reflection of the distance that we still need to gain to be properly set for, whatever the challenges that may come our way. So I'm very, very confident in our ability. The culture in Air Mobility Command is extremely strong in our ability to handle any operational environment. And the culture we're gaining now is that we not only can handle the environment, but we can absolutely shape the environment to the benefit of the joint team, to the benefit of the combined team with partners and allies, and certainly all in support of what our civilian leaders demand that we do. Now, when it comes to re-optimization, we've been focused on great power competition since October 21, aggressively inside of Air Mobility Command. So this re-optimization has been underway, and we're happy that it's complementary and consistent with the efforts that the Air Force is undertaking right now. So I feel that, when it comes to re-optimization, that the Air Mobility Command team is already in step and leading. And that's exactly what our Air Force has demanded since I took over, and it's exactly the leadership we're going to continue to deliver, not just for Air Mobility Command, not just for the Air Force, but for the joint team and for our partners and allies. So lots of good work that has been done, lots underway, and there's certainly an enormous amount of work, as it should be, remains ahead of us.
Great, thanks for that overview. So specifically on the re-optimization effort, these units of action that the Air Force is now deploying, how exactly is that going to change the way AMC deploys forces?
So AMC is probably unique amongst the Air Force deployment echelons, if you will, because we're always in play. We are operating at a depth and at a tempo that mimics more of a crisis and conflict tempo. We don't really get, time off. We're never in a space where demand is lower than supply. So we always have a demand signal that's higher than the supply. So we are constantly looking at priorities. We are constantly looking at the total force team to deliver the capabilities and capacity that this country demands. And so when it comes to the unit of action, I believe the unit of action and the labels that the Air Force is using now is going to help. It's going to blend in nicely with the mobility concept of what AF4 Gen is, and then what it's really truly intended to be. When you look at the response we had for the most current crisis, we had to pull levers when it comes to the total force in terms of not just our commercial capabilities, but our mobilization and volunteerism that happens that were an extreme benefit to our ability to explode into theater. So all these mechanisms fit neatly under reoptimization. We'll continue to work for the Air Force to strengthen them. We'll continue to work with the Air Force so that we understand the mobility nuances and how they need to be rolled out. But, like I said in the opening salvo, the complementary and the consistent nature of these action is going to continue with what we've been doing and the reoptimization effort.
Gotcha. So from what I'm understanding, it's not going to change too much how you guys already deploy your forces.
You're right. Inside the echelons at the wing and group level, there might be some changes in nomenclature. There might be a little bit of difference, nuance of what the staffs look like. But the way we fly, fix, and support flying ops and mobility ops doesn't change. And I've been very clear with my wing commanders on this. I need my wings to wake up tomorrow and do things the exact same way. Structurally, we'll get after things a little bit differently, but the way we fly, fix, support, the way we do airlift, air refueling, air medical evacuation, and the global air mobility support system, all that stays the same.
Got it. And the Air Force, part of this effort, is setting up a new command, Integrated Capabilities Command, to take the MAGCOMs out of the requirements process so they can focus on readiness. From AMC's perspective, when you heard about this, was this a weight off your shoulders, or are you worried that AMC won't be developing the requirements for the next tanker or airlift platform?
Yeah, and I view it as a benefit, but with a little bit of nuance here. First of all, I was not overwhelmed with the roles that I had when it comes to developing the force of the future with my current roles. Not overwhelmed, not burdened, but the integration needed at the higher level, above the MAGCOM level, is absolutely something that needs to be addressed aggressively. So I'm thankful for this approach and what's going to become the Integrated Capabilities Command. So I'll give you an example. In the 50s, the Air Force approached the development of the B-52 and the development of the KC-135 as a system that could handle both conventional missions and missions above that. So we've lost our way a bit since those days. So we tend to think of the mobility platforms as an afterthought when it comes to the next generation of fighters and the next generation of bombers. And we can see that in the fleet today. We can see that the lift and the tankers are generally about 4 generations behind the leading edge of the fighters and the bombers, and that integration was missing at the development stage. So when we get, an integration, an integrated capabilities command, I think that integration is going to be the key word of those 3. The most important is that we integrate together, whether you're developing a bomber, whether you're developing a fighter, whether you're developing a next generation tanker, whether you're developing a next generation lift. That integration is key, that we think about them as a system moving forward. So we cannot lose our voice at the component command level, which is what I become instead of a MAGCOM. So we have to have an operational voice, a strong operational voice, regardless that is going to be pulled up to another command. So how I articulate my requirements, the warfighter requirements, my interactions with Transcom, my interactions with Stratcom, my interactions with Northcom, and all of the other commands, how I sense the mission demands versus the fleet that I have and the fleet that I need. I have to have an ability to integrate in the integration, if you will. And I'm confident that the structure moving forward is gonna keep that operational voice. It's gonna do that with a capability within my command to articulate that voice, and it's gonna exist in my experts being a part of that new command, both in terms of action officers and senior leadership. So I'm very grateful that this is being stood up, and I think that we're gonna depart sharply from the status quo that has mismanaged the integration, and we're going to get to a higher place in a very good way.
Got it. Shifting gears a little bit, you spoke at AFA last month about one of your goals, which is to increase connectivity and have 25% of the fleet connected by 2025. Could you provide a little bit more detail about what that actually entails? You know, is it as simple as putting a kid on an aircraft?
So 25% of the fleet by 2025 is an aggressive goal. That's about 250 airplanes, plus or minus, depending on how you look at it. And it's not just airplanes. It's also is a demand signal on my headquarters, inside the headquarters building here, but also my air operations center across the runway, the AOC, and then also to the GAMs. So we're talking the air mobility ops wings and also the contingency response wings. So I'm looking at the total enterprise when it comes to the 25 by 25 and the necessity to connect. We are condemned right now to essentially have to squeeze a trigger on a microphone to get the situational awareness we need. And I'm convinced that there is capabilities now that exist that we can purchase for a very, very low price, and that we can instantly boost our ability to support the joint team. This is not about Air Mobility Command. This is about supporting the joint team first, and this is about supporting partners and allies second. So the best way we do that is connectivity. So I'm talking very low invasive modifications to airplanes. So think that I can put things in hatches and in windows and on existing infrastructure within my aircraft. Think about roll-on capability that exists right now that has been proven through exercises and operations that roll on and perhaps are a little kit or a small pallet that my crews can plug into. And what I'm striving for here is line of sight, beyond line of sight, secure communications. And what I'm striving for here is that I join the network, whether it's the DAF battle network or the joint network and all of the above. JADC2 certainly a player in this, and we decomplicate this. We get to an approach where I don't have to modify the airplane, that I can have a tablet with a wire that gets to the crew that gives them the situational awareness to know where red and blue are. And then I get out of the way. I let captains and tech sergeants do what captains and tech sergeants do best. They make great decisions. They're the recipients of mission orders, and they can understand priority, understand commander's intent, and they can just get after the mission. And that's exactly what I'm striving for. So I think that we can get there. There's some work to do, and I'll tie it, as I end on this answer here, I'll tie it to the airdrops in Gaza right now. It would be wonderful if I had better connectivity for them right now. As I work the seams of the command relationships, as I understand the threat, and as I integrate with a joint team, as I integrate with the Jordanians and other partners that are doing the operations there, it would be wonderful if I have more connectivity. So, this drive serves the highest end of conflict, but it also serves the highest end of humanitarian support, which we're experiencing right now. So nobody's ever complained about having too much communication. So, but I'm certainly complaining about having too little. And I think 25 by 25, it is acceptable drive that can get us there. Over.
Thank you. That was very interesting. So is there a priority list for which aircraft in the fleet would be in this 25%? Like you said, is it C-17s, C-130s? Which aircraft would be connected first, I guess?
Yeah, so the answer to that is we're going to address the fleet in total, because the fleet in total needs all the work right now. Now, there are some aircraft that have better connectivity than others, and we have to work to get the connectivity. We have to work accounts, and we have to work some training, and we have to work some deficiencies moving forward. And then there's other aircraft that need, the exquisite roll-on kit that can actually get them on step. So there's varying degrees within the fleet in terms of the weapon systems as a whole. But because of the spread of some of the age of the aircraft, there's also different stages of connectivity within the fleet. And you can think like H model C-130s versus J model C-130s. So it's not a crisp, clean answer that I'm going to give you a priority. We do have the outlay when it comes to the lift, the tank, and how we want that done. But the reality is we're going to spread it across, and we're going to demonstrate with that 25% the benefit that the joint force receives. And then we're working extremely hard beyond 2025 to address that 26th percentile and higher on how we deliberately program ahead of that and have the things that we did in 25 become programs of record and then expand beyond that 25%. But we're also looking to learn within that 25% that we did. What worked very well? What didn't work as well as we thought, and to try to drive some uniformity, if you will, as we move forward. So I'm willing to take risk here because the risk of the status quo is unacceptable. And we've proven that both in real world operations, and we've proven that in the exercises that we've completed over the last 2.5 years. So, there's going to be a little bit of risk that maybe perhaps we don't have it quite right, but the connectivity that I'm describing makes the fleet instantly better than it was yesterday.
The Air Force recently sent its 2025 budget to Congress. So was this connectivity effort reflected in the 2025 budget? What kind of resourcing are you guys looking at for this?
Right. So in 24 and 25, we're absolutely taking an approach that there's a commander withhold or some programming within the budget we have that can be helpful. But 25 does have language that addresses this connectivity. So I'm hopeful that as it works through the process, that there'll be an enterprise answer to this money. But there's so there's kind of a spectrum of how we're seeking the resource. So in 24 and 25, it's gonna have to be some wicked prioritization on my part to make sure that I can source the funds from within, and I think it's doable. The helpfulness of the language in the 25 is going to be a magnifier on that, and as we work through the process, I'm optimistic. And then 26 and beyond is about the discipline of the build, and so I'm confident that we're going to have those wedges in there that can deliver this as well.
Got it. You mentioned, how it would have been helpful to have this connectivity in operations in the Middle East, and you mentioned before that we're on 5th and 6th generation fighters and bombers, but you're on generation 2.5 and lifted tanks. So in current operations, how are these older platforms a hindrance? And have there been any specific instances where AMC hasn't been able to do something it needed to do because the aircraft is old?
Right. So we've always been able to do what we needed to do. But that's not really, the way we should approach the future. So, the NDS clearly identifies the pacing challenge, and our secretary and our chief of staff, the whole reoptimization effort in general is very focused on a specific threat and the need to be ready now. So, as magnificent as the mobility actions were for the retrograde and evacuation out of Kabul, as magnificent as our response was to support for Ukraine, as sharp and wonderful as our experience was getting in and supporting Israel, and as successful or being supporting Gaza right now, those pale in comparison to what will happen if we have to fight in the Pacific. So we can't really be comfortable that because our airmen are talented enough that, that fly, fix, and support, that they can make it work, that those necessarily will be the things that can be successful in a high-end near-peer scenario. So we've got to be aggressive. We have more connectivity in our cars and on our cell phone than we do in the forward edge of the mobility platforms right now. And we have got to aggressively depart from that. And this 25 by 25 is going to deliver. I'm confident. I'm confident that that the DAF sees this as a priority and that the Joint Force sees this as a priority. If you, in the testimony that I've watched over the last 2 weeks, and I'm certainly 2 weeks to come, will bear that out. that everybody understands that the mobility fleet is the most relied upon fleet in the history of warfare. It's both a comment on what we need to do to make everybody successful, and it's a comment on what's at stake if we don't win here. So I don't say that from a position of arrogance. I don't say that from a position seeking sympathy. I say that because I understand the reliance on this team. I want to put a team on the field that's ready to handle the full spectrum of operations that may come our way. And it starts with connectivity. It's not asking too much to get the same sort of connected kit and airplanes and things on the ground and how it all connects that the rest of the force enjoys. And so we're continue to work that aggressively.
Got it. And talking about the future mobility fleet, the service is working to define the needs for its future tanker NGAS and future airlift or NGAL. So in those discussions, how are you looking at fleet size? Will AMC need fewer tankers because the next gen ones will be more capable? And I know you've also talked about NGAS being a family of systems. So, what's your vision for that? How many of each type of tanker would be needed, if you could provide more detail on that?
Certainly. So we're taking an effects-based approach to the development of, next generation air refueling systems and next generation airlift, and not a one-size-fits-all approach, and certainly not, at a platform-based approach. So we're in a position right now where kind of straight away from why the Air Force mutinied in 1947. And, when we mutinied in 1947, we wanted effects-based approach to combat operations, not platform-based. And so if you're platform-based, then a tanker can only do tanking, a lift can only do lift. And I think we underestimate the value of these platforms. There's a lot of real estate on these platforms that could do so much more than tank and lift. So a systems approach, in terms of, I can have some airplanes, whether it's tank or lift, that can operate in the permissive environment, and those probably look a lot like the fleet we have now, only more advanced on the inside. There's a part of the fleet that needs to operate in the semi-permissive, meaning, there could be everything from a low to medium threat, perhaps, to no threat. And they can kind of be the midfielders, if you will, on the soccer team that can play both offense and defense. And then we've got to have a fleet that can go into the high weapons engagement zone that has an enormous amount of risk, and support the joint team that's operating there. If any part of the joint team is in a non-permissive, high threat environment, then mobility will have to be in that same environment. There is no doing our mission from sanctuary here. So that's what we're really driving in terms of the systems. But the systems has another depth to it too, and it evolves around, if I have real estate and I design the next fleet appropriately, then I can probably do palletized effects like we demonstrated in Mobility Guardian with a JASM ER launch. I can piggyback with what AFSOC has done with their JASM launches off of their C-130s. And while I'm talking about kinetic versions right now, they could easily be decoy, electronic warfare, spoof. They could be, we could launch something off of an airplane. They can take a life raft to somebody that had to jump out of an airplane and needs a life raft, or it could take a battery down to a soldier that needs a battery for their radio, or it can go out and do a quick pass of the airfield we're about to land on. So those palletized effects are much more than just kinetic. I envision a day where we can airdrop more precisely humanitarian food to someone that's hungry, like we're experiencing now in Gaza. So this systems approach is not just the different levels of threat, but it's also what else we can do. I can do precision navigation and timing for the Joint Force. I can do collect for the Intel Force. I can do linguists for the Intel Force. So if we take advantage of an effects base instead of a platform base, I think we'll develop a very aggressive, highly integrated systems approach to supporting the Joint Force. It'll put the entire joint team in a much better place. And then you talked about numbers. Hey, I'm really focused on the quality within the quantity right now. It doesn't matter what the numbers are, and it's too early in the development to understand exactly what size fleets that you'll have. But I would say we get so caught up in the quantity that we've forgotten the quality within the quantity. And that's both in terms of connectivity to older aircraft that have parts fail more often, to the supply chain drying up, and all those things. So it's important that we look at the systems approach much more broadly than just the threat that they fly in. I'll end on this. I believe the majority will be in the medium WES range that can go both ways. I think there'll be some big strategic lift and tanker that looks very close to what we do now. And then I think on the front end, those will be smaller fleets that have higher capabilities and have qualities that give them success, not necessarily that they have to adopt the same capabilities or attributes that our fighter and our bomber force are. So I'm not looking for stealth, but I'm looking for low observable qualities. I'm not looking for exact VTOL, but I'm looking for VTOL qualities. So as we develop that front end force specifically, I think it'll be smaller numbers with higher capabilities, but I don't necessarily think it's an exact mimic of what the fighters and the bombers look like. Over.
Got it. And you mentioned palletized effects. You're firing off of weapons off of aircraft that have been, long regarded as unarmed cargo haulers. So where do you see you talked about, the command fitting into that combat role? Does AMC have more plans to test palletized effects this year?
Well, the palletized effects will continue to be developed, in partnership with AFSOC and within the command here. So our plans for continued testing and development is absolutely going to continue. We're going to pay close attention to broadening beyond just the kinetics. So making sure that there's other effects that can be gained by that approach. And, it would be inappropriate to discuss the exact things in the exact timelines. But, this is, again, this is back to our DNA as airmen. This is back to the Billy Mitchells and them. And I'm not comparing myself to them, but I'm comparing what the command has done and the thought process in stride with our AFSOC brothers and sisters. Is that, these are things that enable the joint force and the coalition. These are things that, regardless of who your challenge is, complicates their calculus on enormous measure. And these are things that, are absolutely in the art of the possible very quick. And, I believe that a continued foot on the gas pedal on these is absolutely needed.
Got it. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about ongoing operations and the current threat environment that you're seeing right now. You predicted, in a memo that circulated quite widely last year that, war with China could happen as soon as 2025. How do you assess the threat in the Pacific right now? And does that timeline urgency still hold?
So I don't believe war is inevitable. And there is no consensus on any timeline. And that memo has provided the horsepower which generated our ability to see what we needed to see, to stress the team in Mobility Guardian and the exercises after. That memo was one of 9. There were 8 others that followed very consistently. And, I attribute the successes of the command to the discipline on timeline and the discipline on action that needed to happen in a very quick time frame in order for us to do the reoptimization that the Air Force is demanding here. That being said, the best thing I can do to be a steward of the oath of office that I took and to be a commander is to provide our elected officials a force that's ready to take the battle skies and to take the battle space and to take the field and be ready to do everything from deterrence to decisive victory. The good news is the same readiness that we're generating can serve both deterrence and decisive victory. So I absolutely want any potential adversary to look at us and say, I don't want any piece of that. But if they choose to take us on, that same team can deliver the decisive victory necessary that this country and, certainly the world demands. So, we are motoring on a journey to do exactly what the SecAF says. Be ready, focused on great power competition and the full spectrum of what that means. And I'm confident that we're well on that way.
Despite the shift to the Pacific, we're still in the Middle East. As you mentioned, AMC has been conducting humanitarian airdrops in Gaza. And I know it's not, the most effective way to deliver aid in this scenario compared to ground transport, but it's maybe the only solution for now. So how much longer are you guys expecting airdrops to continue? And I know there have been reports of parachutes not deploying safely. So how are you guys, mitigating civilian harm and all of the other risks that are associated with airdropping?
Right. So, first of all, I thought your article was very good on the airdrop operations, and the officers and the enlisted that you quoted in your article that are out there hacking the mission right now are very powerful to Mike Minihan. So they're not caught up in the politics of the situation. They're not caught up in is it the most efficient way? They are amazing airmen who have loved ones back home that are putting their lives on the line to feed people they don't even know. And you saw it firsthand. So, we are going to do what we're tasked to do. I'm not certain what the time frame is, but that team and the planners that surround them in tight integration with the AFCENT team there and our team here back at Scott Air Force Base, and certainly the team across the street at Transcom, are just enormously dedicated to taking every variable out of the equation that can be solved so that we preserve life on the ground. At the same time, airdrop is something we've been doing for decades and decades, and it's not a precise science because of the physics of it. So there is always an inherent risk, and we do everything possible to reduce the risk, including last minute decisions on the drop zones we use, constant stare on the drop zones to see if they're safe. And drop zones really isn't the right terminology. We should use drop areas because they're not protected in the normal way that we do these drops. So normally, there's a secure perimeter that prevents that possibility of unintended consequence, but we don't have that. So, the professionalism of the planners, the professionalism of the crews is 100% dedicated to that. Hey, we're going to make a difference in thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people's lives. I realize that might not be proportional to the immense amount of hunger that exists there. But while everyone else is going to talk about is it necessary or not, we're just going to go out there and feed people, and we're going to do it professionally, and we're going to do it despite the risk to us and those and those that we serve with. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we have a successful outcome. And we're going to continue to refine that. And we're going to do it as long as this nation requires us to do it. And we're honored to do it. Over.
Thank you. Last question. I know we're running over time here. You have about 5 months left in the job. What legacy do you hope to leave behind? What did you get accomplished that you're proud of, and what still needs to get done?
Certainly. I don't want to leave a legacy behind for me. I want to leave a legacy behind for Air Mobility Command and the team that, proudly wears this patch. So we want to be the team that handled the tyranny of the urgent with professionalism, and we made it look routine, even though it's nothing but routine each and every day. We want to be known as the most relied upon force in the history of warfare, not for our egos, but because we supported the joint team and we supported the partners and allies, and we supported our elected officials exactly the way they needed to be supported so that they could be successful. I want to show up when I'm 80 years old at the Air Force's 100th anniversary, and I want to see the fruits of the intellect that this team has invested in developing the force of the future when it comes to next generation airlift, next generation air refueling systems. I want the airmen that wear the Air Mobility Command patch when I'm 80 to be better than me on their average day than I was on my best day. I want to repeat that. I want them to be better than me on their average day than I was on my best day. And I want them to look back in the year 2047, and I want them to say that Air Mobility Command not only handled the business, but they had the time, the discipline, the investment of intellect, the investment of passion, the investment of what we hold dear and what it means to be a mobility airman. And they cared about the airmen that were going to occupy the ranks of AMC 20 or 30 years from now, so much so that we made them successful, and that they had the kit, they had the culture, they had everything they needed to get after the mission in the exact same way that we get after the mission.
General Minihan, thank you for your time and insights today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in today and throughout our State of Defense series. And thank you to all of our underwriters for helping make this event possible. In case you missed any of our State of Defense coverage or want to share it with your friends and colleagues, it's currently available on demand through our event platform, and today's program will be available in 24 hours. We hope to see you next time. For Defense One, I'm Audrey Decker.